today is so rainy, so then I thought, what would be a better video than to talk about books? We're gonna be talking about books that, at least for me, helped me a lot when I was feeling lost. In this collection, it is going to be pure non-fiction books, but I am a believer that fiction books also can help with your personal development. So if you want to know what else I read, just let me know. He says hi. And I actually did a blog post for anyone who wants to get into the reading era and just doesn't know where to start. But I got into my personal reading era, I would say last February, and I always liked reading, and I would mostly read. I read a lot when I was younger, but then, you know, with high school happening, college happening, and then you're kind of like, you have to read very specific things, I just found that I did not have enough time to read. In my senior year of college, I got right back into reading, and honestly, I've been a lot happier since. So yeah, the first book is called Homebody by Rupai Kaur. I really like this book. It's a poetry book. I feel like it's a lot different than her other work. I also read Milk and Honey and The Sun and Her Flower. I read both of those in high school. This one, I'm pretty sure, came out during 2020. And I do think I like it a lot because it is kind of different than her other work, where it does have heavy themes, but it does talk a lot about like productivity and burnout and all these things. And I'm gonna read you my favorite poem from the book. It's one of her longer poems. It's like 2 pages long. It is 88 through 90, and it's called Productivity Anxiety. I have this productivity anxiety that everyone else is working harder than me, and I'm going to be left behind because I'm not working fast enough, long enough, and I'm wasting my time. I don't sit down to have breakfast, I take it to go. I call my mother when I'm free, otherwise it takes too long to have a conversation. I put off everything that won't bring me closer to my dreams, as if the things that I'm putting off are not the dreams themselves. Isn't the dream that I have a mother to call and a table to eat breakfast at? Instead, I'm lost in the sick need to optimize every hour of my day. So I'm improving in some way, making money in some way, advancing my career in some way, because that's what it takes to be successful, right? I excavate my life, package it up, sell it to the world, and when they ask for more, I dig through bones trying to write poems. Capitalism got inside my head and made me think my only value is how much I produce for the people to consume. Capitalism got inside my head and made me think I am worth as long as I am working. I learned impatience from it. I learned self-doubt from it. Learned to plant seeds in the ground and expect flowers the next day. But magic doesn't work like that. Magic doesn't happen because I figured out how to pack more work in a day. Magic moves by the laws of nature, and nature has its own clock. Magic happens when we play, when we escape, daydream, and imagine. That's where everything with the power to fulfill us is waiting on its knees for us. Productivity anxiety. And then the next page, which is like a separate poem, says we can all work at our own pace and still be successful. I just admire that book because it kind of reminds you to take the time to slow down, and kind of reminds us like there are seasons in our lives where things are going to move rapidly, and other times it's just gonna feel like, wow, this just happened like that, you know? And that's the thing about time. And I do think sometimes, like, yes, we need to make our own opportunities, but we also need to take a moment to slow down and enjoy what we have, because if we keep looking for the next thing, we're never going to feel satisfied with what we got. We're always going to feel impatient. We're never going to feel good. And even if we hit that goal, it won't feel satisfying. The next book is a recent read. It is called Burnout. So this is my most recent read, and what I like about this book is kind of how it approaches the conversation going about your day. Because as much as I love personal development, I love figuring out new ways to do things, this one made me kind of put it in the forefront and in my head about ways that I can kind of meet my goals and think about my goals and my expectations and stuff like that, while still considering like my stress. Because I don't think when we go and we're trying to persist and go for the big things we want in life, that we sit there and consider like this, our stress, and then we get really sick. And then once you do get sick and you're kind of in the midst of stress, that's when you become more lost. And I do think that this book did help me reconsider my goals and think about it in a way that's like less strenuous. It does use a lot of psychology, and it talks a lot about experiments, which you'll know I love in development books. I do like a more psychological, scientific approach to things. Have like little templates. I actually created my templates based on this book in my Notion and in my new 12-week year. So I actually am using that a lot for my planning. And I'm also using another book that I read, but since it's a digital book, it wouldn't really fit in here. But I will consider it one of the books I am using when I'm feeling lost. But yeah, design your life. And what I like about it is it takes a design thinking approach. And as someone who minored in design thinking, I really liked how they kind of planned their life. Next book I would say is a good read for when you're feeling lost. This one is very inspirational because it is, personally, I really liked the writing style in this book. And I haven't read this book in a long time, but I did read it during the COVID era. And it basically talks about her experience. I will say, granted, she's already someone who was successful, because the author of this book is the person who is a writer for Grey's Anatomy and all these other shows. But it does have a lot of messaging, and it was very aspirational for me. So I really do think this book helps your mindset a lot when you're feeling lost, but also reminds you to kind of take chances. The Defining Decade. And why I like this book, I love this book. So it makes you start thinking about your own personal timeline, even from things like dating, career, comparison, just like different aspects. Again, this is a very psychological based book because the author, I believe, is a psychologist. It kind of centers around that 20s is your most transformative years. And I said in the video last time that I'm listening to a book, and she says like, okay, your most foundational years are the ones after college, like in that time frame. So I do think from 22 to 25 are very foundational years where you're kind of focused on building your careers, building your friend groups and your support systems, networking. And that can all be very overwhelming. So understanding what habits to build and where to start and the type of conversations you want to have relationships that are fulfilling, to have things in your life that makes you feel happy and full. And it's not just about like the serious things, but like even down to what do you like doing for fun and what do you like to do in social interactions. Because I'm gonna be honest, not everyone is a party person. Not everyone likes to drink. Some people love it, some people don't. And if that's not your version of fun, you have to understand like that's okay too. And if that is your version of fun, that's okay too. But to have a very balanced set of being responsible, because I do think that some people tend to forget self-care is also being responsible. That means responsible in the sense of building habits. Self-care is being organized. Self-care is learning new things. Self-care is remembering to play. Self-care is self-soothing when it's necessary, but also being responsible. Self-care is so many different layers that it's just about having a quality of life that makes you feel full and satisfied, that doesn't make you keep wanting to grasp for more. And a huge part of that is understanding the self in the first place. This one is a regular, I would say, in the self-care space. So this book, again, psychological approach, and it's all about building habits and practicing consistency. And I do think when you're feeling lost, sometimes it helps to reframe and understand what you need to let go of and what you need to add in order to be the person you want to be. I do think that book does the best job in explaining that becoming someone, being someone that makes you happy and satisfied, and building the life you want does take a lot of consistency, and it takes habits too, because even if you're someone like me and you want to not necessarily have the traditional conventional lifestyle, maybe you're someone who is a creative, maybe you're an entrepreneur, building up habits to become those things, to make sure regardless of everything that you are doing those things you need to achieve that identity, is very important. It does reframe your thinking a lot, and I will consider this a book I will always go back to when I'm feeling lost, because sometimes it reminds me that if I'm not satisfied in life, maybe a huge part of it is my habits. And I do think all of these books offer the value for when you're feeling lost, because many of us have to learn and unlearn in our 20s about what is good for us and how to balance like the soothing and the need for fun and, you know, like all these different things with who we want to be, but also enjoying the moment and allowing ourselves to be present. And that's the thing about self-care. It does get confusing. It does get overwhelming, especially in your 20s, because I think 20s are, it's like you're an adult, but you don't feel quite adult yet, you know? Especially your early 20s. It's like we are forced to choose what we want to do at 18. You have guidance counselors from high school breathing down you, and they want you to choose a college, they want you to choose a profession you want to go into. And honestly, having that and like the decisions you make from high school when you are a completely different person, like I'm not anything like I thought I would be, if I'm being so for real. And I do think that identity death is something that really happens throughout your experiences. So for me, I thought I was gonna go into writing because I enjoy writing, but I quickly learned once I did have the class for it, the journalism class for it, that I don't like being limited. I don't like journalism writing. One, with journalism writing, you have to follow a very specific format. Even in the space of something that's like more fun, like beauty and fashion, you still have to follow a very specific format. And on top of that, when it came to like news and stuff like that, like we did learn the basics, but because of learning the basics and not supposed to do like magazine journalism and stuff like that, I ended up hating journalism. And then that made me like, okay, I tried something else. My major was very broad. So one thing I did like was marketing, and I was like, okay, so if I'm gonna do marketing and everything like that, why don't, but I'm also really interested in like my economics class. That's why I was minoring in economics. Then I was also really interested in design, but I didn't think I really wanted to do that full time, because then I would have to rebuild a portfolio, and I wasn't necessarily fully sure on becoming, like, going from advertising, marketing, communication to full on going into the art and design school, because I was in the business school at that point. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just stay in the business school, but I'll do something a little more specific. I like beauty, I like makeup. I went into cosmetic and fragrance marketing, which was product development. You learned how to make products, and it was fun. But then by the time I finished it, I was kind of like, do I really want to go into the beauty industry? It's not that I don't like beauty, but I also kind of like wellness a bit more. And that's the issue. It's like you keep going through these identity deaths throughout your experience. So having like books has really been an anchor for me, at least, to really help me throughout the changes in my life. And I like having these books. I am a book collector, but I also do read, and I do go through most of my shelves. So have a good day, evening or night, and we'll see how I cut this video. Okay, bye.